Hello, my name is Hugh Knight and I'm the Fechtmeister at Die Schlachtschule. We've been doing a series of videos on the introduction to the longsword for new students to Die Schlachtschule. And up to this point we've done most of the very beginner material. So we did a series of videos on the first night kind of things, stance, grip, all that sort of thing. We looked at pell work, we looked at some beginning drills, and then we started to look at the secret strokes or the Meisterhau, the master strokes of the system. And there are 5 of those, and we've already done 4. So we did the Zornhau, the Krumpphau, the Zwerchhau, and the Scheitelhau. And in this video, we're going to look at the last of the secret strokes, the Scheitelhau. Now, the Scheitelhau is a little different from some of the other techniques in that it is almost never intended to be used against another attack blade on blade. There's no binding per se with the Scheitelhau most of the time. Instead, the intention of the Scheitelhau is to enable you to hit a target from the absolute maximum range that a human being can hit. What I mean by that is, we think of the Vitruvian Man of Leonardo da Vinci, showing the angles and the reach at each of those angles. Well, a sword's like that. If you cut low, you don't reach as far as you do if you cut up high. Right? So the point of the Scheitelhau is to cut very high indeed, in a special kind of way, so that you get the maximum reach you can get. And we use that in a couple of different applications. This is the smallest section of all of the Fecht. In every one of the Fechtbücher, this is the smallest section. There are very few techniques for this. As you can see, if you go on to the playlist I've done for Introduction to Longsword, and you can see the all of the plays of the Scheitelhau in there. It really is intended for just 2 purposes. One is to counter the guard of Alber, and we've got a purpose-made video up for just countering the different guards, so I'm not going to go into that here. But the other is to use it as an attack against someone who is foolish enough to cut at your leg. And that's the way we're going to display the technique here today. There is a specific technique in the Fechtbücher called the Überlaufen, or the overrunning. Now, what this technique is designed to do, if my opponent chooses to cut me to the leg, okay, his reach doesn't go as far. So look where he is relative to my leg. But look how far he'd be past me if he'd been cutting in my head. So the correct way to respond to a leg cut is to simply move the leg. But unfortunately, now you're in a very bad position, okay? So it's not enough just to step back. So what the masters tell us to do is to step back and cut to his head with an overhead. As you can see, I'm not blocking anything he's doing, but I'm defeating him by using my longest range technique. Now, the Fechtbücher don't specifically say this has to be a Scheitelhau, but since the intention is to do it from a greater distance than he can cut with the leg, and since your opponent might have longer arms than you do, it seems a very good choice, and that's what we're going to demonstrate here today. Now, the way this technique is normally taught is as a counter to the guard Alber. And in fact, you have to understand that that's a very specialized kind of thing. Again, see the video I've created on breaking the guards. You can't do it against somebody who's just standing there static. But I'm going to use that as a way to demonstrate the mechanics of how to perform the cut. And I'm going to do it with a triangle step, taking me slightly offline so I get around his point. Now, this is simply a Zornhau, but done with your hands up high and on the center line. So when you cut with this cut, you cut like that. And now my hands are actually up and almost twisted into a straight line instead of my hilt being lower than my point. I'm picking my hands up well above to try and reach up and over. So when I'm striking my opponent, I'm going to be doing this, all right? And you are not trying to hit back behind his head. You're trying to hit him like right on the front edge, the beginning of this head. And again, you'll notice I'm doing it with a triangle step, which brings me just close enough to hit him. Okay? You can see how much reach that gives me. And that's really all there is to this technique. It is just like the Zornhau, done with a push-pull motion of your hands. My right hand pushes out, my left hand picks up, and that's all there is to it. Now, although this is the Scheitelhau, or cut, right? The masters specifically say that if you miss, you simply turn it into a thrust. Now, that tells us a couple of things, actually, which is quite interesting. The first is that they anticipate there might be some missing, right? And the reason they anticipate that is because instead of hitting him with a good amount of your blade to make sure it goes through, you're really trying to get him with the point, the very tip of your sword, right on the very tip of his head. And when my students tell this, I tell them that if you don't miss sometimes, you're not really trying to cut it fine enough. And if you do what the masters say to do, is simply turn it into a thrust. So if I cut and I don't really get it, I just turn it into a thrust to finish the technique. Kill him, okay? All right, so just to finish this off then, we're going to demonstrate it against a leg cut. So this is the Überlaufen done with a Scheitelhau, okay? You can see that I'm hitting him very easily, despite him missing me completely. One last time, and that's the entirety of the technique.